Well, good afternoon, everyone. Prynhawn da, or good morning, bore da, and all different time zones in between. Lovely to see so many familiar faces and new faces on the screen. We're just allowing people from the waiting room, waiting for a few more to appear. I am trying to spot Christmas jumpers or Christmas backgrounds or things that might signal an end of year. I should have mandated some festive backgrounds for those who celebrate such things, but alas, I didn't do that. Oh, there might be some trees in Tessa's background. No, no, maybe not. Um, there we go. Uh, Lovely. If you are able to pop on your cameras, that's always helpful to see faces as well as note that you're with us. And bandwidths and all sorts don't always allow for that, but lovely for those who can come on camera to do so. Um, well, welcome. Just a few kind of housekeeping things at the very beginning. For those who haven't met me, my name's Jack, based in Wales at the Office of the Future Generations Commissioner for Wales. I'm one of the co-leads for the ImPACT Coalition. I'll soon be handing over to another co-lead very shortly. But can I encourage you to pop into the chat who you are, where you're from? That's always helpful as well to give a bit of context to who you are and what you're doing and where you are in the world. And we will be recording this session as this meeting. We do post a link to these recordings on the website for those who can't join us. So just a note at the beginning that we will be recording. And the eagle-eyed ones amongst you will have noticed that have extended this meeting slightly. Some of that is based on the feedback that we had at previous meetings to give a bit more time, because there's so much to cover. So we're very keen to not squeeze the time as well. So if you have noticed that this is an hour and a half session for those that can stay for that time, that's perfect. So I think we are more or less ready to go. Can I thank you for coming? And this is the last meeting of 2025. It has flown by this year, and we'll have an opportunity later to reflect on the year that's been, but possibly more importantly, what's to come in the year next year for us as a coalition, but also for members as well. The first item on the agenda is around the UN developments and how we're progressing at that more global level around the Declaration for Future Generations. And quite a significant milestone has taken place over the last couple of, within the last month, really, which I will just tee up and hand over to Hashani to build on. But it's a significant moment in that we now have a UN group of friends for future generations at the UN, which is an exciting opportunity because it kind of brings that part into the ecosystem. This opportunity for member states to lead together to understand how it supports each other. And interestingly for us, it means that the coalition has a bit of a role to play, a bit of a docking station alongside the group of friends in advancing the declaration on future generations. It's taken a bit of time, so there are lots of people to thank. I won't start thanking them, but there are lots of people both in the UN system itself, amongst member states, but also in civic society, in the partners. It's something that as a coalition we've always willed to take place, and it has now been achieved. And I think that having a group of friends means that the impetus, there's some catalytic, I'm making words up, I think. There are opportunities now for us to advance the agenda on that level. And we look forward to supporting that. But uh, Hashani, you've been in that system, playing a role in navigating that on behalf of the coalition and in other spaces as well. So, your reflections on the significant moment of having a group of friends and how you see the coalition and the group of friends playing out. But croeso, welcome, Ashani.
Thanks so much, Jack. And Hi everyone, it's so lovely to be with you all. If you haven't met me before, my name is Hashani Damdasa. I'm a Senior Director at the United Nations Foundation. I've been working closely as a co-chair with Jack and Jerry and Alimi. Since the pact was launched last September, there are so many people that Jack mentioned that we need to thank, but a lot of it was since that effort from September to this year was really trying to elevate the political leadership and sustain that momentum. And there was a formulation of an idea of a group of friends in September that was shared by the co-facilitators, Jamaica and Netherlands. And that really took almost a year to really crystallize. And a colleague of mine, Nadar Youssef, who I think some of you know well, and myself have been providing informal support to the formation of the group of friends, and will continue to do so. And a lot of our efforts are to ensure that the ImPACT Coalition here today is really the civil society conduit to the group. And here today to share some of the reflections, and hopefully you'll be able to hear from Jamaica and the Netherlands in our next quarterly session in 2026. But yes, it's celebratory because the launch did take place finally on the 13th of November, hosted by the Mission of Jamaica as well as the Mission of Netherlands. It really marked a major milestone since the declaration, which implementation of PACT has had some, I guess, hurdles to overcome. A lot of that has been about the political leadership as well as financing. So this has been a major milestone. So core members currently include Jamaica, Netherlands, of course, Portugal, Kenya, Egypt, Senegal, Morocco, and the European Union. There are also a host of group engaged members that are interested, but were unable to officially sign on, and hopefully they sign on by the public launch, which I'll come back to. These engaged members include Brazil, Indonesia, Mexico, Costa Rica, Chile, Uruguay, Republic of Korea, Singapore, the UK, and India. Now, these members are either, still consulting with Capital or just interested to join or interested to learn more, if not be official members. So more on this soon. But I think the biggest takeaway from the launch was this real sense of political momentum, even after a year, despite the many, many challenges that UN has faced. And member states really describe the declaration as one of the most valuable consensus-driven achievements. And we just know how hard it is to achieve consensus. So the fact that member states still feel that says so much about the power of the declaration, and that the real work is now translating that vision into action. And the group of friends is really designed to do that now, especially in lieu of the envoy, and really to keep the agenda on the Declaration of Future Generations alive here around the UN, but also back home, supporting learning across regions. There's so many powerful stories to share and tell, so a sense of political solidarity, but also learning, and really strengthening kind of the long-term leadership that you're all championing, not just within the declaration, but thinking across multiple intergovernmental processes. And there are some key milestones next year. We also heard from Guy Ryder, the UN's Undersecretary General for Policy, who really stressed that the declaration is a politically significant instrument in a moment where the UN is facing some real pressure. So the fact that the declaration has stayed so on the top of their consciousness is quite clear. Member states also shared like national updates, Kenya's Senate Committee on Future Generations, Portugal's Foresight Ecosystem, the EU Commissioner for Intergenerational Fairness, and the strategy that's unfolding, Senegal's constitutional reforms, Uruguay's committees of the future. It's a real reminder that the agenda is moving at a national level and really needs to continue moving from national to global. We also have civil society reflections, and this is one of the, I think, few groups of friends that actually has a deliberate engagement with civil society. So the School for International Futures on the indicators and practical tools, which we'll hear later today. you and you on strengthening kind of this science policy interface and the platform that they shared most recently with us. And Jack as well represented the ImPACT Coalition and really the global efforts on long-term governance overall in your efforts today. So looking forward, the group of friends is really looking to meet quarterly. They might explore a possible retreat, but we do know that there will be a public-facing moment in early 2026 to really officially launch the group of friends. There's also multiple opportunities for us to unpack with the ImPACT Coalition on kind of national examples, case studies, and learning. So we really want to use this opportunity to work closely with all of you because implementation really does come from a national level. That political leadership comes from capital, and it really flows into these very political processes here. So very much excited to work with all of you. But I hope that's a helpful recap, Jack. Anything that you'd like to share before we flip to the next section?
Well, maybe it's a bit of an ask of our members, and as we better understand the terms of reference and understand the governance and program of activities, if that becomes the case for the group of friends, is how do we increase the membership of the group of friends? We have membership across the world as part of the coalitions in countries that are not currently members of the group of friends, and how the coalition can encourage, support, draw attention, raise awareness of the value of being a member of the group of friends. And there will be politics, there will be lots of various kind of factors to contend with. But I can see members on the screen who are sitting in countries who have good active relationships with their own governments, with their own member states, who might wish to, as part of their ambitions for 2026, encourage, support, amplify, spotlight, signpost, all the words are being used, their countries to navigate towards becoming members of the group of friends. And the coalition will find its role, I think, in encouraging that, supporting that over time. But just a thought, perhaps, to leave with members as they have conversations with their counterparts in their own respective governments to flag this as a significant opportunity and support for governments who are seeking to adopt or apply elements of the declaration domestically, is to know that there is this kind of central um, group that they can now turn to for encouragement and support. So nothing more to add. That was great. Thanks, Ashani.
Thanks so much, Jack. And absolutely agree. And if there are areas of where you're seeing national interest growing in the group in future generations, it's an opportunity to share that with the group of friends. So we're going to shift a little into kind of one of my most favorite sections of all of our ImPACT Coalition calls, which is our member spotlights and really showcasing regional trends. It really shows the breadth and depth of this coalition and really opportunities for us to learn more because it's hard to have your eyes everywhere and your ears listening to everything. So really excited for this segment. Each of our speakers will have about 5 minutes to share their insights about what's happening at a regional level and also exploring how this ImPACT Coalition or a community could support them. Once we go through those interventions, we'll have a bit of a poll that will pulse your priorities, how things have been, etc. And then we'll open up to the floor for a couple of questions. So we're first going to go to our speaker, Pisa, who's a professor at the University of Southern Denmark and a member of the Knowledge Committee for the European Citizens Panel on Intergenerational Fairness. Pisa, love to hand it over to you.
Thank you much. Thanks for having me, and very glad to address the coalition. So Jacob asked me to brief you on an interesting process, to say the least, that I've been going through in the last 3 months at the Commission level in Europe. So the messages, things are moving on populations, and things may now also be moving on generations at the highest level of the European Commission. So the previous commission that stopped working about a year ago was the first ever in history to have a commissioner portfolio for democracy and demography, immediately at the highest level of a vice president. That was a lady from Croatia, and I've been honored to, over those past 5 years, to address her as part of a small informal group of population experts on 5 occasions. Another question, we can debate that, is whether there was a concrete impact, but the awareness is there. And then now the new commission, which, as you know, has just celebrated its first anniversary, the second von der Leyen Commission, has made priority of two things. So first of all, this new commission also has, for the first time in history, a commissioner no longer now for democracy and demography, that has been scrapped, actually, but a new commissioner for intergenerational fairness, youth, culture, and sports. That's also a first in the long history of the commission. It's a young politician from Malta called Glenn Mikalev, and he got the brief about a year ago from von der Leyen to come up in February, end of February next year, with a new strategy document for intergenerational fairness at the European level. So that's coming up in a couple of months' time. And so, if you like, the procedural novelty here was that for about the third or the fourth time, the new commission has been setting up these so-called European citizens panels, where at least the rhetoric and partly also the practice is truly this notion of deliberative democracy in action. So in this concrete case, the European Citizens Panel for Intergenerational Fairness, the idea was to select altogether something like 150 citizens of Europe from all over the different member states, 1/3 of whom were below 29 years of age. And over a 3-month process and 3 weekends in October, in September, and then just last month in November, to have them actually spend an entire weekend, all 150 of them, deliberating, or what the Commission calls it, co-creating, giving over these 3 weekends, in these 3 months, their input. In the end, 3 weeks ago was the final delivery of their set of proposals on what to do and how to include those in the upcoming strategy document of the commissioner that's coming out in the end of February. So that's the novelty, already movement or change. I was lucky because I was honored to be one of the 10 experts to guide, as a sort of the knowledge committee, to guide these 150 citizens in their deliberations over those 3 weekends. And so, well, do you want the good news or the bad news first?
Let's go with good.
All right. So, well, I was skeptical. I'm a political economist, so I was skeptical, for example, of the environmental soundness, let's say, of having 150 citizens fly over to Brussels and so on. I was also worried it might be a very expensive PR gimmick. I still worry. We shall see in February. But the good news is the following. Through these 3 weekends, I really did sense, somewhat to my surprise, a genuine and also an increasing sense of those particular 150 citizens there. Of course, the Commission claims they're randomly sampled. Of course, that's not true, cannot be true. There's a strong self-selection going on there. But of course, those who did come, I really did sense, somewhat to my surprise, a genuine sense of engagement on the one hand with the topic, probably also an increasing sense of knowledge about the topic, but thirdly, also a very real sense of proximity that wasn't there back in September, because the Commission, after all, has a well-known and well-advertised democratic deficit and democratic distance from citizens, that I did see over those 3 weekends and these 3 months narrow considerably. The degree to which the Commission, after or in the document in February, and then afterwards will actually pick up these proposals, remains to be seen. But I think the procedure alone is a novelty that we need to applaud and follow up.
Thank you so much, Peter. I feel like we missed your bad news, but maybe that's not too bad because we're on time. But
Well,
thank
I
you
didn't
so
mention
much.
it. So, I mean, very shortly. So, in the third weekend was when they finally sat together in separate groups to really hammer out, deliberatively once again, but in smaller groups, their actual proposals. Um, and so, as an expert on social policy and welfare states and on intergenerational fairness in policy, one thing that I was struck by was the absence of any real sustained thinking on pension systems and how they interlink with the demographic. We shouldn't maybe call it a crisis, but certainly with very advanced demographic aging in Europe. And that, for me is, a rather important element of the story of fairness between generations when it comes to policies. But that's in a way a minor gripe, you see. The entire process of deliberative democracy is, of course, to let the citizens bring up and, really propose what they think is more important. And that's part of the story I do think worked as more or less as planned.
Thank you, Peter. You sound like an internal optimist, which is fantastic. But these are concerns that have also been raised in different settings, including the group of friends on demographic shifts and pensions. So maybe a space for us to kind of unpack in our one of our quarterly sessions. So thank you so much, Peter.
Sure.
Next, we're going to move to Oceania. I'm delighted to introduce Thomas from the Tomorrow Together campaign in New Zealand. Thomas, the floor is yours.
Kia ora, everyone. Hello. Yeah, my name's Thomas Blakey. Thank you so much for having me. I'm joining very early in the morning, so I'll pop off after this. But yeah, really excited to share some of our work in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I'll just share a few slides I have. Hopefully everyone can see this. Give me a nod if you can. Awesome. Yeah, kia ora. Welcome. I'm with the Wellbeing Economy Alliance in New Zealand. So we're a group of independent, nonpartisan think tank working to redesign the economy and around well-being, people, and the environment in Aotearoa, New Zealand. This is a group of the Rangatahi, the youth leadership group behind the Tomorrow Together campaign. We're backed by lots of different sectors, individuals, across the island, and I'm part of the youth leadership group designing the Tomorrow Together campaign. So we're really passionate about future generations and bringing people together, and we're proposing not just an idea or a bunch of ideas. We're trying to build a movement, an intergenerational movement for Future Generations Act and a number of other things in Aotearoa. So we've got huge issues in New Zealand, just like across the world. I mean, we really see that we need some fundamental change in our legislation and in our culture, shifting from the short-term thinking to really intergenerational thinking. And yeah, the evidence is really clear. Our current systems are failing our future generations. We've got really big problems, fragmented tools, weak accountability, siloed planning that really can't tackle these intergenerational challenges. And we, all the Wellbeing Economy Alliance, we've done some polling in New Zealand. We found that 78% of New Zealanders believe that the interests of future generations really should be a priority when making decisions on important policies in the present day. Yet 70% say that the politicians aren't focused on this, and they're focused on short-term measures. So we know we've got a big problem, and we know that we've got the public support behind it to make a change. We also signed up for the Pact for the Future, and we've signed it up to do this whole of government approach to coordination. So we're, as a group, we're trying to think, how do we connect people up and how do we make a change that kind of affects the fundamentals of it all at the cultural level and the policy level there as well. We're working with a number of different groups across the spectrum, because we know that we can't do it alone. We're looking at these kind of international movements and then our Indigenous work as well. So lots of different groups. We're really lucky we had Jacob here not very long ago, just a month or so ago. And yeah, kind of sharing what's happening internationally. We're really inspired by our Wales Future Generations work there, with it being passed in 2015. We're really inspired by the wellbeing goals, the Future Generations kind of commissioner model, and we want to embed some of the same practices. We're also really inspired by the work that's happening in Australia. So they've introduced the Wellbeing and Future Generations Bill into Parliament this year, which is really exciting, since we're just across a small ditch of water. We kind of look to them a lot of the time. So we know that a lot of other groups and countries are doing some amazing work, and we think that we can follow in the footsteps, embedding our Indigenous knowledge as well. So we've been thinking about what this might look like. We've been talking to lots of different groups over the last year, lots of different decision makers, and we've come up with a few different things that we're working on. So what could it look like? Here we're really drawing on overseas models, thinking that Future Generations Act could place a duty on all public bodies to act in the interests of future generations, considering some of these long-term social, economic, and cultural impacts in every decision, and also upholding our Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which is our founding document between the tribal chiefs and then the British kind of colonial government who came over the crown. So really embedding that with things like Future Generations Principle, an independent commissioner, some long-term goals, and really transparency and accountability mechanisms all built in. So we've been thinking about these ideas and have come up with them, but we know that this isn't like a blueprint. This is just ideas, and we kind of think of it as like a smorgasbord of picking and mixing different things from around the world but also that are based here. And yeah, we know that we can't do it alone. There needs to be lots of other reforms as well, things with the public finance reform, and multi-year cross-agency budgeting, things like that we've been thinking about. You might have heard some of the current work that government's doing is kind of a backsliding in this space, but we know that we really have to push hard, weaving in our Indigenous knowledge and things that are already happening here. We're really excited. We launched our the discussion document for the campaign. So this is it here. You can find it online. But yeah, we launched it 2 months ago now in Parliament, supported by lots of different members of Parliament from across the political spectrum. We also had 2 former Prime Ministers speaking at the launch event from both sides of the political spectrum as well. So it was really encouraging to see this bipartisan work there. We've got a charter which different organisations are signing onto, which is really exciting as well. And we've got this document here that would really encourage you to scan and have a look through and get feedback on. We've been sharing it around the country, getting people to share it in the communities and doing webinars and talks and everything, talking about what it means to really have intergenerational fairness in our policy making. So this is our example of how we're trying to do that and get the discussions rolling through this year and then going into next year. Yeah, and we're really looking forward to the election next year and hoping that some political parties can take it up in their political manifestos, which they are starting to do, but really trying to build a bipartisan consensus there for future generations. Yeah. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Thomas. That was brilliant. Kudos to all the hard efforts. I know a lot of love and tears have gone to put all of that together, and we should really think through about messaging from the reports and the survey that you shared and how that informs kind of the global conversations. But thank you so much. We're going to flip to, well, staying in Oceania, I'm going to flip to Claire. So excited to hear from you, Claire, from Foundations for Tomorrow in Australia. Claire, over to you.
Thanks so much, Hashani. Hi, everyone. I'm Claire, as Hashani just said. I'm a UN youth leader from Australia, just across the water from Thomas and other Kiwi neighbours in New Zealand. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Jacob and Hashani for having me here today to share about recent developments in Australia. So, yeah, as I think was mentioned before, it's been just over a year since 193 member states adopted the Pact for the Future by consensus. I think 444 days to be precise. Australia was one of those countries, and in the time since, we've had quite a significant coordinated push by civil society to bring its vision to life. So, in the next few minutes, I'm hoping to give a quick bit of a broad strokes picture of Australia's implementation journey so far. And I guess I'd preface by saying this is a really complex process. So if you're still a little like, wait, what's going on down under? By the end of this, that's completely okay. But first, perhaps who am I and who are FFT or Foundations for Tomorrow? If you haven't come across us before, we're a pretty small, largely volunteer-run organization, but our voice is getting louder and louder in the Future Gens landscape in Australia. I'm personally a social impact leader and next generation foresight practitioner fellow with the School of International Futures for 2026. I'm focused on embedding intergenerational collaboration into Australia's governance structures. I'm also part of the core leadership team at FFT. So we're a youth-driven organisation. We were founded back in 2020 and are now recognised as one of the leading conveners of Australia's Future Gen movement. In 2023, we set up the Australian Parliamentary Group for Future Generations, which is a cross-party network of 20 plus parliamentarians championing long-term governance. And later that year as well, we also founded the Intergenerational Fairness Coalition, which is a growing collective of now over 30 civil society organizations, of which FFT is the chair. And over the past 2 years, we've really dedicated ourselves to researching and collaborating to map all the possible avenues for future generations policy in Australia. And the outcome of this process was just last year, our For Our Future report, which formed the backbone of the bill mentioned by Thomas just before, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Bill. It was introduced into our national parliament in February this year. And as I'm sure a few of you might be wondering, like, what happened next? When the bill was introduced, Australia was headed for a national election. And during that period, all legislation before the House or the Parliament collapses. So we always knew at the time the bill's biggest chance for impact would be awareness raising. And it did just that. We had a really strong public and political response for the idea that it's not revolutionary for a country to have a long-term vision. It's just common sense, responsible policy making. But really, the outcome of the election in May demonstrated that Australia doesn't yet have the political authority or alignment needed to pass a reform of this scale of ambition yet. And that's exactly what SWAF's, like the third prong of SWAF's intergenerational prism highlights, which is that ambitious reform really needs strong political leadership to succeed. So that's where our focus has shifted. And where have we come since February? Well, we've realized that without ambition alone, really, without alignment and design discipline, it's just not enough. So FFT is now coordinating a really deeply collaborative effort to catalyze a national conversation that would bring Australians together around a shared long-term vision for the direction of our country. And I've only got a minute and a half or so left trying to respect the time limit given to me, so do bear with me. Explaining this in 90 seconds or so doesn't really do it justice, but I'll give it a go. So we began with a June to November exploration phase to test, is a national conversation something that's actually valuable and timely in our country, which that phase confirmed it is. So we followed that up with a 12-week research sprint, engaging 29 experts and organizations to shape the vision and engagement model for this, the insights of which are captured in our draft Building the Australia We Want paper, which we launched at the November meeting of the Parliamentary Group for Future Generations. And I'd just like to give a shout out here to SWAF and specifically to Kat Tully, without whose expertise and advice we wouldn't be where we are today. But now, from now until March, we're in the consultative phase of our program. So we're direction setting, defining, and planning for our governance structures. And that is something that we hope will lead to the launch of the National Conversation Development Lab in March 2026, alongside the final report of Building the Australia We Want. And that lab, we hope, will run until June, July 2027, where we'll be prototyping and piloting engagement approaches, facilitation models, and data systems to test how a national conversation could work in practice. And then by mid-2027, we hope to deliver a final package with a proposal for a national conversation and to advocate for a bold commitment from government heading into the 2028 federal election. I'm almost at the end of my time, so I think just before I hand back to Hashani, I guess one thing you can take away from this really short intervention is that ambition, it's just not enough. Delivering long-term reform in Australia and, of course, beyond requires alignment across generations, across sectors, regions, and lived experiences. And as part of our commitment down under to implementing the Declaration on Future Generations, we're now leading a large-scale structured collaboration to co-create a public mandate for reform that will be road-tested and hopefully ready for adoption in the 49th Parliament. If you want to hear more, I'm always happy to chat. I'll put some links in my email in the chat. But with that, I'll hand back to Hashani.
That was brilliant, Claire. And you did so well in 5 minutes. That was jam-packed. And huge kudos to you as well as starting your journey as a next generation foresight practitioner with SWAF. And I think there's lots of opportunities for us to kind of explore the lab and the national dialogue series and how there are complementary efforts in different continents, but also how that informs the declaration. But we'll come back to you soon, Claire. But thank you. We're now going to turn to North America, where we have Alison from the Office of the Auditor General of Canada. Alison, thank you for being with us today. You have a little bit longer. You have 10 minutes. So over to you.
We'll try to keep it brief as well. So maybe we won't get the full 10 minutes in. But I'm joined also by my colleague, Vanessa. And her and I are both senior performance auditors at the Office of the Auditor General here in Canada. And we work on audits of the environment and sustainable development. And could someone just give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen? Okay, perfect. So I will start by taking us through a little bit just of who we are, and then Vanessa will go into the work done that she did on the lessons learned on sustainable development in Canada. So one unique aspect of our office is that we have a Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development in-house who's appointed by the Auditor General for a 7-year term, and this position has existed since 1995. The Commissioner provides independent analysis and recommendations to the federal government on efforts to protect the environment, mitigation of climate change, and fostering sustainable development. And I will get into in a second how this sustainable development relates to future generations, specifically in Canada. And the Commissioner also manages the environmental petitions process, which is a way for Canadians to bring their concerns about environmental issues to the Auditor General's office and get a guaranteed response from government organizations within a certain number of days. And linking back to future generations with our work, so there's 2 acts that mandate the work of the Commissioner that relate to future generations. So the Auditor General Act defines sustainable development as including respect for nature and meeting the needs of future generations. And the Sustainable Development Act in Canada defines sustainable development as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So really, future generations are embedded in all of the work that the Commissioner does here at the office. So recognizing that sustainable development inherently captures future generations, there's a few things that have happened in Canada to help move forward that agenda at our office. So we have internal processes. All performance audits are required to consider environment and sustainable development risks in their planning phase, including the Sustainable Development Goals and other international commitments and frameworks. And these are often incorporated into the objectives of our audits, the lines of inquiries that we explore, and audit questions. And we also have an in-house specialist team that provides guidance, support, and training on how to effectively incorporate this into audit. And our current internal specialist on environment and sustainable development is Elsa DaCosta, who is on the call with us today if there's any questions after this. As I mentioned, our audits bring awareness to the topics of concern for future generations. So for example, this year we've published audits on early learning and childcare, climate adaptation, and protection of critical habitats, for example. And the Commissioner does have a mandate that legally requires us to look at progress towards climate change mitigation measures at least once every 5 years under the Canadian Net Zero Emissions Accountability Act. and the Commissioner has made a commitment to do so annually, so more frequently than required, until such time as we see progress moving in the right direction on these measures. So this year we released the third annual report, and they are typically published every fall. And we also have work done on Canada's Federal Sustainable Development Strategy, which is the federal implementation of the UN SDGs. So this was expanded in 2022 to require over 100 federal organizations to contribute and develop their own departmental sustainable development strategies. And our office takes a look at those strategies and audits the progress against those commitments. And then most importantly for our conversation today, we have the Sustainable Development Lessons Learned product, which is not an audit report, but it is a retrospective on progress that's happened towards sustainable development in Canada. And this is building off of the success of a similar report we did on the lessons learned on climate change. And Vanessa was the lead auditor who was working on that project, so she will take you through the findings.
Great, thanks, Allison. So in June of this year, the Commissioner of the Environment and Sustainable Development tabled a lessons learned report, which focused on sustainable development. So this was not an audit report, but it looked back on 3 decades of Canadian work in sustainable development, and it included also an analysis of our office's previous audit recommendations, as well as interviews with experts in the field. And this was all to identify trends in Canadian efforts and also offer lessons learned on how we could move forward. So the report offers advice to federal departments and parliamentarians as Canada moves forward in its efforts to implement sustainable development and aims to frame future discussions and actions on the sustainable development agenda. So in this report, next slide, Allison, sorry. So the report highlights trends in Canadian efforts, and I've pulled one of the figures from the report, but what we kind of saw was while Canada's score has been above average for member countries of the OECD and high-income countries, our performance is below average for the G7, and we have been the slowest country to make progress among G7 countries. And we've struggled on particular goals such as SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, SDG 13, climate action, and SDG 15, life on land. Okay, next slide, Allison. Thanks. So in this report, we offer 6 lessons learned. These include strengthening leadership at the national level, taking an integrated approach to sustainable development planning, enhanced collaboration among key players with a specific focus on greater engagement with Indigenous government and people, improved tracking and reporting, and taking a long-term approach that protects future generations and ensures continuous progress. So in each lesson, we discuss the challenges that the government has faced over the past 3 decades. We point to opportunities as a path forward. And for each lesson, we also pose critical questions for our parliamentarians to consider. So given this group's focus, I will stick with detailing lesson 6, which speaks to taking a long-term approach. So under this lesson, the report, we point to challenges in Canadian efforts, including a focus on short-term actions and operational changes, rather than taking a broader long-term consideration of sustainable development. So Canadian government planning cycles tend to favor these short-term thinking at the expense of long-term planning. And, sustainable development requires upfront investments and benefits that might not be realized until the future. And this makes it difficult to gain support in the face of short-term election cycles and the need for immediate results. In terms of opportunities, the that to make progress toward long-term sustainability, a fundamental shift in thinking and acting from the perspective of future generations is required, and that the Canadian government needs to enhance the consideration of the needs of both present and future generations to effectively advance sustainable development. And we, in the report, have pointed to 3 kind of examples in other countries. So, of course, the Wales Wellbeing of Future Generations Act and the Future Generation Commissioner. Finland has established a committee for the future, which is an independent parliamentary body that deliberates on long-term trends and advises lawmakers. And then we point to Costa Rica's generational law for young people, which has an established framework to include youth in decision-making. And through this lesson, we ask the following questions of our parliamentarians. So how can our federal government ensure that the interests of future generations are included in decision-making? And how can our government better involve youth in sustainable development policies and programs? So in terms of impacts from this work, the report we're hoping will assist parliamentarians in holding our government to account in meeting its international and domestic sustainable development commitments. And we hope that decision makers within our government will consider the questions that we've posed to them directly in the report under each lesson. Additionally, we're trying to raise awareness of Canadians of the importance of fostering sustainable development. In the report, we're also hoping that it's going to lead to future audits at our office that incorporate the interests of future generations and adopt a long-term perspective. But for us, the ultimate goal is, of course, improved government performance in all areas. And so that was it for our presentation. And thank you again for having us.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Alice and Vanessa. That was such a rich contribution, and really value the synergy of thinking between the SDGs and future generations, which is an emerging conversation that's happening as the 2030 agenda ends quite soon. But also just a really great showcase in thinking about how future generations as approach is important to auditing, transparency, and other accountability processes, which are so crucial to implementation, not just the policies themselves. And just a quick note, we will share all the decks from speakers following the call. So don't worry, you'll get all the great stuff from everyone. So now we're over to Africa. We are joined by Beatrice from Ghana and Eob from Algeria, both UNICEF Innocenti Youth Foresight Fellows, doing such incredible work linking youth foresight to national policy. It's great to have you both. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'd like to say thank you to everyone who is here, and to, most importantly, Jacob, who I had the opportunity to meet at the Dubai Futures Forum. To quickly introduce myself, I'm Beatrice Efiol-Wilson. Once again, I'm currently the UNICEF Youth Foresight Fellow representing Ghana. And our work with UNICEF Innocenti is very crucial and important because it creates room and gives us like the tools to actually go into the field and in our communities and ask young people, hey, what do you want to see become your reality in the next 10 to 15 years? And this is something that we don't normally experience, at least in my part of the world. Young people are just seen as, on the receiving end. You're just there, boom, there's a new policy being implemented and nobody is asking you if you really want this. So this was a very crucial moment for all of us. And we went into the field. I conducted research on AI and education, and I explored discrepancies or like disparities in how young people envision AI to transform learning, and how teachers are also seeing it as a kind of hindrance to young people's critical thinking, reflective and cognitive skills, basically. And some of the visions that evolved were just amazing. Young people wanted to collaborate with each other and with AI and think beyond what they are normally used to. So they wanted to have an AI collaboration where their thought processes are pushed so that they can become better at actually thinking critically and becoming more creative. Aside this, I think I want to also highlight the fact that the UNICEF Innocenti Foresight Fellowship is like a platform where, aside as gathering the data, we go forth into international stages or onto international stages. We've had the Needed Minds Conference and the Dubai Futures Forum, which I mentioned initially. So what we do over there is we have intergenerational dialogues with experts in the field and other young people from around the world. And this opens room for more insights to be gathered and then to actually have these action spaces. So we actually think of how we can put all of these insights into action with experts, ministers, investors, all of them brought into one place to push for this agenda. And I'd also love to mention that UNICEF Innocenti very recently received the IF Award from the Association of Professional Futurists. And that has been really exciting for all of us. So I'll give the stage to my fellow IU to introduce themselves and continue. Yeah.
So, hello everyone. I'm so happy and honored to be here with you. So, this is Ayub. I'm the UNICEF Youth Foresight from Algeria, and I had like the chance to take part of this year's fellowship program with UNICEF Innocenti. Actually, when applying for the fellowship, I didn't know what foresight is, and now like I kind of want to make it my career because I found like I discovered a new total field of thinking and like making decisions. For me, with the contribution of the country office of UNICEF Algeria and also my institutional partner, the Higher Council of Youth, which is a consultancy board for the president of Algeria, I had like the chance to like do some foresight workshops and involve youth and children from Algeria. Yes, I had children from 10 to 15 taking part of my foresight workshops, and we worked on thinking or imagining the future of education here in Nigeria. My theme was about extracurricular activities as a tool for skills development for youth and children. And having institutional partners such the Higher Council of Youth gave like a direct channel to advocate for the like the results of the work for workshops, foresight workshops. So what I mean by that, like the Higher Council of Youth gave me like the chance to meet the ministries like concerned, the Minister of Youth and Minister of Education, to like tell them and share with them the outcomes or the results of the foresight workshops. And having kids like being part of these workshops was really amazing, and it was a fun experience because foresight is something like so hard to explain to a kid, but we found a way to like involve them by using storytelling and games where they had to imagine the future, where their characters, they imagined how they live in that future. And actually, in the UNICEF Youth Foresight Fellowship, we learned about different foresight tools, but the ones we used for our research was the three horizons. And the thing is that like when we think about the present, the horizon one, it was easier for the adults, like for the youth to criticize the current system, but it was hard for the kids and who are young. But when it comes to imagination, it was really easier for kids and it was like harder for the older people. So I think this approach made me like think more on how making foresight accessible for everyone because we might get the real ideas and the futures we cannot imagine as adults, like from children themselves. So now I'm like working with the UNICEF country office to implement the foresight tools in taking decisions with the Higher Council of Youth, and we are going to do like think tanks and the round tables with youth intersectorial meetings where we can include foresight thinking into sports, education, higher education, and other fields. And that's it for me, actually. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Beatrice. Ayub, what fantastic work, and congratulations on the award. Jack snuck me a sneak tip while you were chatting, which is to say, lots of your work actually is implementation of the declaration. Article 27 is investing capacity to better prepare for and respond to future global shocks. So this is such an amazing connection between the work and the implementation of the declaration and practice. And you're among a strong community of foresight lovers, so you're well loved here. We're going to now move over to Europe. We have Diana from the School of International Futures, who has been central to some dialogues on the declaration on on some dialogues on the implementation of the declaration. Sorry, it's end of 2025 brain. Diana, over to you.
Thank you so much. Great to see you all. So many friends here. It's always so nice and amazing to hear the updates. I'm really inspired by all of the stories. So thank you, Jack and Harshani, for convening this and for holding the space for us. I know many of you, but if you don't know the School of International Futures and myself, We are a global not-for-profit collective of foresight practitioners and policymakers working to use futures and foresight to transform the present and to advocate for better governance and policymaking. As Claire mentioned, she's one of our next generation foresight practitioners. We have a network of young foresight practitioners, but we also have a network that is really convening around the Declaration on Future Generations and how we can build a movement to implement the principles of the Declaration in the spirit of the well-being of protecting the well-being of current and future generations. So many of you I know here are part of that network as well. And I am part of the team that manages that network, and we alongside building this the kind of connections and knowledge sharing like we're doing today. We also do a lot of work at the national level supporting these kind of build these these building movements around long-term governance and future generations, and then trying to take those lessons and inspiration up to different multilateral spaces to inspire political commitment at the UN level, at the EU level, but also other regional spaces and thematic spaces like the COP and so on. So that's kind of what we do at the School of International Futures, and we're really excited to be able to help kind of be that connector between what's happening at the national level and then trying to inspire that commitment and change at the international level. And as Harshani just mentioned, we've been doing that at the UN through a dialogue series. So since the Summit of the Future to keep kind of the momentum alive at the UN. And as all of you know, there's so much pressure at the UN right now with very kind of immediate short-term issues and crises. It was very important for us and our coalition of partners, many of whom are on this call, to keep that momentum alive around long-term thinking about considering future generations in decision making today. And so part of our efforts was to convene a dialogue series at the UN with the co-facilitators of the Declaration on Future Generations, the missions of the Netherlands and Jamaica. And also the mission of Kenya that stepped up to want to take a leadership role on this as well. So the three missions and us, we convene sort of monthly dialogue events around some key policy issues that were being discussed at the UN around everything from SDGs to climate to financing for development to social development, trying to just make it more tangible what the declaration means in practice and to show some of the innovations that all of you have already been discussing here and kind of uplift that to the policymakers at the UN who are taking these negotiations at the multilateral level. So we did that over the last year. We sort of took the learnings from that and a broader set of learnings across our work at the national level and put them in an updated handbook with a foreword from those three ambassadors. I've just popped the link there in the chat. And that was really our attempt to sort of, highlight, look, there's so much energy around the DFG. There's already so much going on at the national level. This is a real opportunity to do things differently and to embed this different way of thinking into all decision-making processes and summits and things like that at the UN. So that's the handbook there. And since that handbook, there's been ongoing, we're really seeing so much energy around how the DFG is being adopted in different contexts, not just at the national level, but at the regional level, but also at an even more local level. So very recently, and this was just yesterday actually, in very close to me, I'm based in Los Angeles, just north of me in San Mateo County, we've been supporting the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors, who adopted yesterday a resolution to implement the DFG at the county level, and they've kind of used it to help them advance issues around youth and mental health, youth leadership and mental health. And it's exciting because it's the first sort of county that's adopted the DFG in such a way. And they've just been inspired by the global lessons, really. And the people that have been working on this have been inspired by by what's going on in the Netherlands, in Australia, in Wales. And it just shows that the energy of a group like this can really make change across the world. So am so encouraged by developments like that. We also, I know Peter was mentioning the Citizens Assembly at the EU level recently, and that was we were also trying to connect, what we're doing at the European national level to that EU regional process. And on the occasion of that last Citizens Assembly, alongside the Prime Minister's office in Finland and Sitra, we held a roundtable, and that the aim of that was really to build the political buy-in to this IGF strategy, and to really make the case that it can result in tangible change at your country level. So I encourage everyone to, especially those based in Europe, to make those kind of advocacy calls to their politicians at these kind of multilateral levels, because I think sometimes that connection between, what they're advocating for, these kind of abstract processes that they're part of, the more we can ground it in real tangible examples, I think the more political buy-in and momentum we can get. So the two really go hand in hand. Finally, I just wanted to conclude that we, as I mentioned, have this long-term governance network, and we have been sharing stories across our networks during these monthly meetings. It's sort of we like to call it like a therapy session for foresight practitioners and policymakers on these issues. And we talk about what's working, what's not, and have discussions around, really practical tools for people to take forward. So if you're interested, if you're not already part of that, I know many of you are, but I'll pop that link as well into the chat for you to join. And we're hoping to continue the dialogue series in the new year at the UN as well, and root it more this year around specific issues that member states are interested in the coming year. So, for example, security. Um, we have something around, sorry, it's escaped me now. But there's a whole list of ideas, and would welcome, if anyone has any suggestions to make, or would like to showcase some of their work, please get in touch. We'd be really happy to find space for that. And just want to finally thank again Harshani, Jack, Dawia, some key partners that we've been doing the work in New York with, to really keep this agenda alive at that level. And thank you to everyone else who we've been working with at other levels. So thank you. Really appreciate the space.
Thank you so much, Diana. It's always fabulous to hear the extensive work from SWAF. And so finally, we have our final speaker from Asia. I'm thrilled to welcome Prachi, who is one of our Next Generation India Fellows and is a co-author of a recently published Our Future India report, which is one of the largest national foresight exercises with young people, which actually proposes a ministry of the future. And Prachi had the incredible opportunity to actually speak with Kim Stanley Robinson about that idea in one of our Brazil town halls. So Prachi, over to you.
Hello, and thank you so much, Harshani, for inviting me here. My favorite calls are the ones where we have folks joining in from across time zones, because you see some people just waking up with puffy eyes, whereas the rest of us are about to tune off after a long day, and that's the fun of it. It makes me feel like the world is a small, connected place after all. And I'm really glad that this is my last call for the day, because I feel so hopeful for the future already listening to all of you. And I think maybe I would start off my intervention by telling you all about how and why I ended up here in the first place. So when I was a young student at 18 years old, I remember asking myself, what can an ordinary girl like me do about a big problem like climate change? And so, from my dorm room, I developed an app for climate action called Cool the Globe, which at the time I thought only me and my father were going to use. And now it's been almost 10 years to that day, and we actually have citizens from 150 countries uniting on the app to take climate action in their day to day lives. And the reason, so I mean, the fact that I can be here today is a testament to how far we've come in the future thinking agenda in the first place. Because I still remember that 18-year-old self 10 years ago, with dewy eyes. She had no idea of this ecosystem of organizations who are working towards the future, but she did have a zeal to make some kind of a dent into it. And so how I could be here in front of all of you in the first place is because wonderful Harshani from UN Foundation spotted me 2 years ago and appointed me to be a lead fellow for UN Foundation's Next Generation India Fellowship Program. And over the last 2 years, we've done some very exciting work, very close to our hearts, that I'd love to share with you in the next 3-4 minutes. 2 years ago, we appointed 10 very dynamic, remarkable young people from different parts of India with a simple mission, which is that as young people, we aren't just spectators. We can play an active role in shaping our countries and shaping the future of the world. But how do we do that? When we were appointed, it was very clear to us that our mission was to take this idea beyond the 10 of us to young people across the country. And so we did. We traveled across India, talked to young people from diverse backgrounds, from tier 1 cities to 64 tribal communities. We talked with intergenerational stakeholders, experts from all walks of life, policymakers, and we consolidated the recommendations that came from these intergenerational stakeholders into what we now launched as our Future India report. So our Future India report is a labor of 2 years of on-ground experiences that we had. And what we did was we identified 5 future disruptors that we thought were going to shape our country the most, from artificial intelligence to climate change to rapid urbanization. And then we traveled across India asking for young people and intergenerational stakeholders for their recommendations within these disruptors. And then there were 2 very common themes and trends that we noticed as we did that. The first trend that we noticed was that a lot of the young people we were talking to did not even know about these words, did not know about these future disruptors, and yet they were living through it. And that was a part of their recommendations because they came straight from their lived experiences. We spoke to this young girl in a tribal town in Bhubaneswar who talked about how when she was little, the forest was right at her doorstep. And as I grew up, the forest moved further and further away from me, she said. We talked to another young person who said, in my family, we could afford to send only one of my brothers out to the city, and his life looks nothing like mine now. So I don't know how to talk to him. And that was the effect that rapid urbanization had on his life. And because they were speaking from their lived experiences, the recommendations that came were also equally powerful. The second trend that we noticed was, even if they felt like they were far removed from this ecosystem where futures were being shaped, there was a zeal to make a difference. There was a zeal to be a part of these dialogues, part of these discussions. So many young people came to us and said, can we come for more consultations? Can we do more such exercises? There was like an immense yearning to be a part of it. And we met. I remember meeting a young girl. She was at 19. She became the first young woman in her community to stand for their local elections because she cared for the future of her village. These were the kind of people that we met. And so through these experiences that we had in developing our Future India report, I think the 2 opportunities I'd like to share today was the first opportunity that also formed the basis of our key recommendation in the report is Ministry for Future Affairs. I know it sounds straight out of a Harry Potter novel, but there is a precedent for it. So UAE, for example, has a Ministry of Possibilities. India formed a body called Niti Aayog, which deals in future thinking. We've been talking a lot about India at 2047, engaging organizations across the country for future thinking. Corporates and organizations even have been appointing chief futures officers, and all of these ideas are a part of Ministry of Future Affairs, which is a body that looks at protecting the rights of not just current generations but also future generations. And then second opportunity I think I can talk about is intergenerational town halls that we hosted across the last 2 years. UN Foundation has been hosting intergenerational town halls across countries. I had the opportunity to be a part of one recently. I just came back from Brazil at COP30. And as in the COP30 halls, we were talking with policymakers and ministers. This intergenerational town hall that we did there was like a breath of fresh air, where young people came face to face with world leaders. And we actually developed a platform where young people could write letters to future leaders that formed the Balaam Declaration for future generations that will continue to shape future COPs. So as I share this, I know there's a lot of information here, but I think I'd like to end with one final insight, which again we noticed as we were developing the Future India report, which is that based on the socio-economic background of the young people we were talking to, and we talked to thousands of young people, we noticed that their vision of how far they could look into the future would change. Because I cannot worry about tomorrow if I'm worried about how I'm going to get food on my plate today. And I cannot worry about next year if I'm worried about how I'm going to get shelter above my head tomorrow. I cannot worry about the future of my country if I'm worried about the future of my family. And I cannot worry about the future of the world if I'm worried about the future of my country. And so I think that we would make the most headway in future thinking is if we start thinking about how do we empower young people to dream big and have a fair chance at having their dreams met. And how do we empower a generation of young people who even are equipped to think about the future and are not plagued by the problems of the present? I think when we do that, we would have met the most headway. So thank you so much for having me here today. And I hope we all get to meet each other again and again. Listening to all of you on this call was definitely the best part of my day. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Prachi. What brilliant work. And it was really a joy working with you over the last 2.5 years on this report, and would encourage everyone to grab a read. And Jack, your influence is also hardwired into this report. So we were going to do some polls, but I'm conscious of time and really wanted to give space for partners to, this is your opportunity to ask any questions, share your reflections or any announcements. It's also a good time to spotlight reports that you're planning in 2026, any national developments that you're excited by, initiatives that you think that it's worth sharing with the coalition. So raise your hand if you'd like to share. This moment's yours. Thanks, Delia. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. I was really, really excited to hear about all of these developments and to see who are the faces of these changes as well. While you were all speaking, I was typing so fast. I was trying to capitalize on everything that I heard about, just so that I try to complete the project that I've been working on for a long time, which you may have heard during the last meeting. But if you weren't there, I have worked on a platform to capture all the case studies of institutions, legal frameworks, of citizen assemblies, think tanks, etc. on future generations, mentioning intergenerational equity. So I have tried to complete as much as I can, but feel free to suggest and come to me if you do not see it, or if it's incomplete, or if it's incorrect. I will put the link in the chat again, but hopefully we'll try to make visible and surface the invisible to a broad range of policymakers. And make it accessible as well to academics for their analysis.
Such brilliant work, Dale. I'm so excited for this to be shared across. There's so much potential, and definitely encourage all members to share and use the platform, and maybe something for us to consider next year in our efforts. Erica, it's great to see you. Over to you.
Yes, great to be here with all of you, and great for all the ongoing work. And just for those who don't know me, I work for the EU Policy Lab at the European Commission, and we're supporting the design of the strategy that is upcoming. So we did a year-long process preparation with some of you here in the call, joining forces. Bringing the knowledge to our colleagues at DG EAC, who's the DG in Education, Youth, Culture, Sports, that are actually writing now on the official communication for intergenerational fairness. This official communication is not a legal document, but more of an inspirational document, let's say, so non-binding, but very advising, let's say, for the colleague partners in member states. They are making a mixture of work that has been done by us in the last year as and you as partners in preparing this. They're connecting it to the citizens panel that has happened. There were 3 weekends where 150 citizens came together to discuss the topic as well. And they're connecting it to the ongoing work that is happening in the European Commission with the different directorate generals, so ministries. Yeah, we are inspiring them, but we're not in the loop of what the document will become. But next to the document that will come out March, April next year, when it will be presented to the college. So this is the official group of the president and commissioners. And but with that, we're working now on the website with all the preparation materials that we worked on, and the website will probably be supportive very much, because the communication is more, this is what the Commission advises, and on our website we actually have also the visions, the stories, the actions that you cooked with us in a way, so to make it more tangible. And also on the Intergenerational Council, the dialogues, we are also supporting how you can include the future and all living in the conversation. So not only the existing generations, but also the non-existing partners in our life, in our ecosystems. So we're trying to make things more tangible for the strategy. So we're in the last sprint to kind of bring that together to share beginning of next year. And we're grateful to work together, which we're trying to get into the strategy with some of you as well on funding. So we don't want to do some things, we don't want to do it ourselves. We, as the Commission, are trying to support the movement as we do it together. And that's the whole message, that it's all of us in the joint venture of creating that better, fair future for all and future generations. So this is a short update. More will come in the end of Q1, I guess. But and I'll share as soon as we have it also, the website and stuff. But in short.
Fantastic, Erica. So many great strides, such a short period, so many things still left to do. I imagine your end of 2025 is very busy. But wanted to flag 2 things. I mean, the season here, the calendar, the intergovernmental calendar here at the UN is very complementary to your efforts. It's something that we could pick up in the new year. Michael, I saw your hand was up and down. Did you want to come in still?
Sure. Just to after Erica, Erica has been great in advancing the Good Ancestors exhibition as well. Thanks very much for that. I think we need tools to make future generations felt, and culture, heritage, and the arts, I think, have a lot of those. Um, the there's many ways. I'll put a link in there to the Good Ancestors exhibition that, thanks to Erica and Cornelius Holthoff, made it to UNESCO last week for World Futures Day. Some of you might have seen it there. That I think is helpful. I think it did help with the European Citizens Panel. I agree with Peter that that was wonderful. There's also something that I want to share to get your ideas on, and that was that a lot of the participants of the Citizens Panel put their hands on a canvas to mimic the Cave of the Hands in Argentina. And I think that is a powerful symbol of our common humanity and our responsibility for future generations. I'll pop a link into that as well. If that brings up any ideas, I want to work on that further. Thanks.
Thanks, thanks so much. Sorry, my AirPods have died. Such bad timing. I hope you can still hear me. Lydia, over to you.
Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I wanted to share with all of you a new project, a law project from Uruguay Parliament. It's a framework law for future generations with focus on intergenerational fairness and collaboration. And over the past years, Uruguay has made a deliberate effort to incorporate anticipatory governance into its institutional culture. This goes beyond long-term planning. It is about strengthening the capacity and competencies required to use the future as a resource for decision-making in the present. Our work in Parliament has focused on building futures literacy, developing the ability to recognize, question, and diversify anticipatory assumptions, to understand how different models of the future shape action today, and to enable public institutions to operate in contexts marked by uncertainty, novelty, and rapid transformation. The recently introduced framework for law project for the well-being of future generations and intergenerational fairness is a concrete step in this direction. Although still is under parliamentary discussion, the project provides an institutional architecture designed to strengthen anticipatory capacities across government. And we are doing or trying to do this through three strategic components. One, it's a parliamentary commissioners for future generations. Second, a permanent multi-actor forum. And third, a national anticipatory tools and literacy building capacities. So by this way, we think that Uruguay can contribute with this perspective to the global conversation, one grounded in democratic values, collective intelligence, and a commitment to building the future with responsibility and imagination and freedom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lydia. So inspiring. And we actually had a representative from Uruguay in the group of friends who shared this update. So this is so fantastic to hear this growing and moving forward. Stephen, over to you.
Hi, I'm a little sick, so I'm gonna keep this as short as possible. But I just wanted to point out that I put some information early in the chat in the chat window about activities that we've been following up on since the Summit of the Future, with a focus specifically on how youth can be engaged more successfully in moving from idea to action, and this has involved organization of Futures Literacy and Foresight Labs with the UNESCO Futures Literacy and Foresight team and the Bridges Coalition and the Learning Planet Institute in Paris and the Global Futures Laboratory at Arizona State University. But it really comes out of the activity that we did together, including with many of the people who are in this body, with the Future Generations Commissioner in Wales, with SWAF and a number of other partners, the Club of Rome. So we are continuing with these activities and hoping to gain further momentum throughout the spring. And we would really be very interested to have as much dialogue and potential involvement in co-design with this coalition in particular, and so invite you. I just put I think I just put or the email for the directorate at Bridges in there. So would encourage anyone to get hold of us, and we could set up a call and talk about how we could strengthen this process. One of the ambitions is by the summer to have some normative instruments that we can be working within this UNESCO context, and within the Bridges and the management of social transformations context. We're working closely with the 35 member state intergovernmental Council of the Management of Social Transformations program at UNESCO. And our ambition is to see how we can encourage and facilitate action on the ground within member state contexts that follows through on the ambitions of the Declaration on Future Generations. This is what everybody here is talking about. So I just wanted to let you know this is happening, this is ongoing, and we'd be delighted to collaborate more closely with anyone in this coalition.
No, thank you so much, Stephen, for sharing. It's such a rich area of work, and I think Jack and our ears picked up. So I saw him nodding along. So we will come back to you and sort of think through how we bring this efforts together. Jack and I have worked so long together. I know his facial reactions. But I saw a couple of comments through. We will share decks. We will share a recording. I know, Dara, you were taking notes. Don't worry. You'll get the recording. You'll get notes from this call. So hopefully that helps in keeping track. But wanted to say just thank you so much, everyone. Truly, what we heard across every region today was the same message. Future Generations agenda is becoming real. Wales did set us off, but we're seeing it take traction around the world. It's showing up in legislation. It's showing up in audit processes and community work, youth leadership, budgeting reforms, even at the UN, citizen assemblies and policy planning and dialogues. But we've also heard how fragile these gains can be, particularly when geopolitics is so variable. And it's exactly why this coalition matters. And just hearing how this space gives connection, visibility, and shared strength for all our efforts. We all do a little bit of internal planning amongst the co-chairs to really think through how we focus on really raising awareness around your national efforts. There's a strong component around narrative and messaging, and Michael's point on culture is so clear, but also the interconnections between different regional platforms from the EU to the AU to the UN, and how, as Swaf described, how this trickles up and trickles back down. So we'll circulate a date for our first quarterly meeting, which we hope will be in February or March next year. It will also link very closely to the Group of Friends public launch. As I said, you'll get a written summary of today's insights as well as recording. And a huge thank you and shout out to my fellow co-chairs, Jack, who's on the call, Nijeri and Alimi, all of our brilliant speakers and every single member who's contributed throughout 2025. Wishing you a restful, relaxed end of year. I think everyone's happy to say goodbye to 2025 and so excited for 2026 and seeing you all in the new year. Thanks, everyone.